Chapter 1. Nico. The world exploded in a symphony of screaming metal and shattering glass. One second I was cruising down a rain-slicked side street, the wipers keeping a lazy beat against the downpour, my mind on a logistics issue at the port. The next, a blacked-out Ram pickup, a goddamn battering ram, blew the intersection and T-boned my 7 Series. The impact was a physical body blow, a 2-ton tank hitting me at 50. My armored sedan spun, the chassis groaning in protest as my head whipped, striking the reinforced B-pillar. Stars erupted behind my eyes, bright and violent, instinct, not thought. Before the car had even finished its sickening spin, I was moving. The unmistakable thwack, thwack, thwack of automatic gunfire stitching the air was just noise. I didn't yell. I didn't brace. I moved. My hand was already on the 1911 I kept holstered to the transmission console. I brought it up, firing twice through my own spider-webbed windshield at the dark shape blurring past. A scream. Good. The Ram had skidded to a stop, angled to block the street. 2 men boiled out, black tactical gear, rifles up, amateurs. They were bunched together. I fired again, double tapping through the passenger side glass. The first man spun, a red flower blooming on his chest. The second dove for cover, but I was already out of my door, using the wrecked sedan as a shield. He was clumsy, panicked by his partner's fall. He raised his rifle, muzzle flashing fire. A white-hot poker slid between my ribs, a searing bullet graze that stole my breath. I ignored it. I raised my arm, sighted down the barrel, and exhaled. 1 shot. The man's head snapped back. He crumpled behind the pickup's massive grille. Silence. The sudden, deafening quiet after a war, broken only by the hiss of rain on my hot engine block and the tink-tink-tink of shell casings hitting wet asphalt. I leaned against my car, the adrenaline starting its slow, painful retreat. My shoulder ached from the impact. The graze on my ribs burned like hell. Amateur fucking hour! I spat, scanning the street. Empty. I holstered my weapon and did a quick assessment. That's when I felt it. The graze wasn't the problem. My left hand, clamped to my side just above my hip, came away sticky. Dark. Too dark, even in the watery orange glow of the streetlights. I'd been so focused on the rifleman, I'd missed the third shooter. A pistol round, likely from the truck. It hadn't just grazed, it had dug. Fanculo. I slid back into the driver's seat, the fine Italian leather already slick. My phone was on the floor, screen cracked. I grabbed it. It lit up. But who would I call? This was the problem. My father, Don Valerio Bianchi, didn't tolerate failure. He was old school, a dinosaur who believed in omertà, honor, and fear. To him, an ambush wasn't just an attack. It was a symptom of stupidity, of weakness. If I rolled into the compound bleeding, I'd get a lecture on situational awareness before I got a surgeon. Worse, this ambush was too clean, too perfectly timed on a route I'd changed at the last second. This reeked of an inside job, and that meant I couldn't trust anyone. My mind flashed, unbidden, to her. Isabella. My ex-fiancée, the snake I'd almost brought into my bed, into my family. Her betrayal hadn't just broken an engagement, it had shattered our familia. It had created a civil war of whispers, pitting loyalists to my father's old, stupid alliances against my own men, the ones I'd handpicked for their loyalty and skill. Isabella was gone, banished, but her poison remained. Her family was still allied with my father, and I knew one of them had sold me out tonight. I couldn't go to the compound. I couldn't risk my personal doctor. He reported to my father. and I couldn't call my own soldati, not until I knew who the mole was. Calling them to a hot scene might just be leading them into a secondary trap. I was the viper, the capo of the Bianchi family, and I was alone in a wrecked car, bleeding out. The irony was so thick I could taste it, metallic as the blood on my tongue. The world was starting to gray at the edges. The rain was a dull roar. I had minutes, 10, maybe 15, before I was too lightheaded to drive. I needed somewhere clean, somewhere outside the life, somewhere no one would even think to look for me. One name, a flash of brown sugar and flour. Elena. No. Fuck. No. My fist hit the dashboard, the impact jarring my wounded side. A low groan of pure agony escaped my lips. Anyone but her. Elena Rossi, Marco's little sister. Marco, my best friend since childhood, my most trusted soldato. The one man alive I would and had, trusted with my back. The only man I knew for a fact had zero loyalty to my father's old regime, and Elena was his one inviolable rule. She wasn't just off limits by some abstract mafia code. She was Marco's. She was the one piece of civilian innocence he'd managed to protect, a bright, normal life walled off from the blood and betrayal of ours. He'd kill any man in our organization who even looked at her. And I, his capo and his friend, had always respected it. Going to her wasn't just a risk. It was a betrayal. It was dragging her into the one world Marco had given his life to keep her from. It was putting a target on her back so big it would cover her entire goddamn bakery. But the alley was spinning. The dashboard lights were blurring into a green and red smear. It was a choice between betraying my best friend or bleeding out in a stolen side street. Survival is a selfish, ugly beast. "Forgive me, Marco," I whispered. I slammed my fist against the dash. The engine, miraculously, was still idling. I threw the mangled gear shift into drive. The car protested, metal shrieking against metal, but it moved. The 10-block drive was a watercolor painting of neon and rain, a fever dream of red lights and blurred faces. Steered with one hand, the other clamped to the gushing wound in my side. The graze on my ribs was a footnote, a dull throb against the sharp, rhythmic agony at my hip. I didn't drive to the front of her shop. I knew the alley. I knew the delivery entrance. The car stalled as I skidded to a stop, the bumper kissing the brick wall of her building. The silence was absolute. I took a breath. It rattled. This was the last, hardest part. I shoved the door open, my legs screaming as they took my weight. Concrete. They felt like concrete. The world tilted violently. I grabbed the car door to steady myself, my vision tunneling. 10 feet, just 10 feet to her door. 1 step, my side exploded in fire. 2 steps, my knee buckled. 3, I was leaning against the cold, wet brick, using it to hold myself up. I saw the door, solid, wooden, safe. I lurched forward, a final, desperate push. My legs gave out. I stumbled, my shoulder hitting the solid wood. I was going down. My last ounce of strength gone, I slid down the door, leaving a wet, dark stain in my wake. My hand fumbled, weak, for the handle. I hit the wood with the heel of my palm. Not a knock. A thud. A useless, weak sound, barely audible over the rain. Just one thud. Then the alley, the rain, and the world went black.
Chapter 2. Elena. The bakery was my sanctuary. Outside, the November rain lashed against the front windows, but inside it was warm. The air was a sweet, comforting cloud of vanilla, cardamom, and the lingering toasty scent of the morning sourdough. A lo-fi jazz playlist was humming from the small speaker on the counter, the saxophone a lazy, smooth ribbon of sound in the quiet. This was my favorite time of night. The last customer was long gone, the display cases were empty, and the big industrial ovens were cooling with satisfying tinks. I just finished wiping down the stainless steel counters, my movements practiced and rhythmic. This was my life, the one I had built with my own 2 hands, one cannoli at a time. It was simple, it was mine, and it was safe. My brother Marco had made sure of that. He lived in a world of shadows, a world that paid for this bakery in ways I was smart enough not to ask about. His one non-negotiable rule was that his world and mine never, ever touched. I was the civilian, the good Rossi, and I was happy to be. I was untying the strings of my flour-dusted apron when I heard it. Thud! I froze, the jazz note hanging in the air. It wasn't a knock. It was a heavy, dead-weight sound, like a sack of flour being dropped. It came from the back door, the private alley entrance I only ever used for deliveries. My heart didn't just jump, it seized. No one used that door, not at 10 p.m., not in a storm. Thud. Softer this time, followed by a long, wet scrape. Every urban survival instinct Marco had ever drilled into me screamed to life. I didn't call out. I didn't run. I moved silently, grabbing the heaviest, most formidable weapon I owned, a solid maple 20-inch French rolling pin. I gripped the tapered end, my knuckles white. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice sounding ridiculously small. Only the rain answered. I crept toward the door, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I had a peephole, but it was useless in the dark, rain-lashed alley. Then I heard it. A groan. Low, pained, and human. My fear was instantly eclipsed by a different, dumber instinct. Someone's hurt. I flicked on the bright halogen floodlight that lit the alley, my hand shaking. "I'm calling the police!" "Don't!" a voice rasped from the other side, a voice I knew better than my own, a voice that had haunted my daydreams and starred in my most secret, stupid fantasies for the last 10 years. My blood ran cold. "Nico?" I fumbled with the deadbolt, my hands suddenly slick with sweat. I ripped the door open. He didn't just fall in. He collapsed, a dead weight of wet leather and misery, his 6'3" frame folding onto my clean linoleum floor in a heap. The man on my floor wasn't the Nico Bianchi I daydreamed about. The Nico I knew was a walking, breathing paradox, a tailored suit of armor, all sharp lines, perfect hair, and cold, watchful eyes that saw everything. He was the Viper, the Capo in waiting, a man who radiated so much power and controlled danger that the air temperature dropped when he entered a room. He was my brother's boss, my brother's best friend, and the one man I was forbidden from even thinking about. The man on my floor was a nightmare. He was soaked, not just with rain, but with blood. It was everywhere, a dark, viscous stain spreading from his side, turning the white of his expensive button-down shirt into a ruined maroon map. His face was a pale, waxy gray under the warm bakery lights, his hair plastered to his forehead. "Nico!" I shrieked, dropping the rolling pin with a clatter. I fell to my knees beside him. "Oh my God, what happened?" "Marco!" "No," he growled, the word a blade. His hand shot out, impossibly fast, and clamped around my wrist. His grip was steel, even now. "No! Marco! You're bleeding! You need a hospital, an ambulance." "No! Hospital!" He was looking at me, his eyes unfocused, but burning with a terrifying intensity. "No, cops! No, Marco! Understand!" I understood. I understood that his world had just kicked down my door and was bleeding all over my floor. "Okay," I said, my voice shaking. "Okay, no Marco, no hospital, but I have to. Nico, I have to stop the bleeding." He just grunted, his eyes sliding shut. He was losing consciousness. "No, no, no, stay with me." I slapped his cheek, hard. "Nico!" His eyes snapped open, blazing with a raw, animalistic fury that made me flinch. "Don't," he snarled. "Then help me," I snapped back, fear making me brave. "I can't lift you, you idiot. You have to move." "Move." To my shock, he did. With a groan that sounded torn from the depths of his soul, he used the doorframe and my shoulder to haul his massive frame upright. He was heavy, a dead weight of muscle and pain, and he leaned on me, his breath hot and ragged against my ear. The smell of him was intoxicating and terrifying. Rain, expensive cologne, and the sharp, coppery tang of blood. I half-dragged, half-carried him through my own kitchen, past the cooling racks of biscotti, and into my small apartment above the shop. He collapsed onto my sofa, a dark, bloody stain on my beige upholstery. I didn't care. "I'll be right back." "Don't." Don't die, I ordered and ran back to the shop. I grabbed my biggest, cleanest kitchen towels, my sharpest pair of shears, and the first aid kit I kept under the sink. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely work the zipper. When I got back, he was paler, his head lolled back against the cushion. Nico! I knelt in front of him. I have to cut your shirt. I have to see the wound. He just gave a short, sharp nod, his eyes closed. I took a steadying breath. My shears, usually reserved for butcher's twine, slid easily through the fine, ruined cotton. I cut upward, the fabric falling away to reveal him. I'd seen him in suits. I'd seen him in casual shirts that hinted at the power beneath. But this was different. This was a landscape. His chest and abdomen were a roadmap of lean, hard muscle, dusted with dark hair, and scars, a long, puckered white line on his ribs, a small, round indentation near his collarbone. This was the geography of his life, and this was the new, raw wound. It was on his left side, just above his hip, a ragged, dark hole, weeping blood. It looked deep. Okay, I whispered, more to myself than to him. Okay. I pressed a clean towel to the wound, hard. Nico roared. He jackknifed off the couch, his hand clamping around my throat. Not hard enough to crush, but hard enough to hold. He was suddenly, terrifyingly awake, his eyes black with pure, feral instinct. He had me pinned, his face inches from mine. Get off, he growled. You're bleeding, I choked out, refusing to panic. I pressed harder on the towel, driving my knuckles into the wound. I'm trying to help you, you ungrateful bastard. His eyes, those dark, bottomless pits of fury, suddenly cleared. He saw me. He really saw me. Not an attacker. Me. Elena. The hand at my throat didn't disappear, but it gentled. His thumb stroked, once, over the pulse hammering at the base of my throat. He was still pinning me, but it wasn't an attack anymore. It was a cage. You shouldn't, he whispered, his voice a rough gravel. He was breathing hard, the pain and the adrenaline making him primal. You're clean. You shouldn't be touching this. You didn't give me a choice, I whispered back, my heart doing a wild, frantic salsa. We were frozen, inches apart. His other hand was still clamped over mine, pressing it to his bleeding side. We were connected. He stared at my mouth. I stared at his. The air in the room was so thick, so charged, I couldn't breathe. It was all him. Blood, rain, danger. You smell like, he murmured, his gaze heavy, delirious. Sugar. And then he hauled me in. It wasn't a kiss. It was an obliteration. It was the raw, desperate, possessive claim of a dying man. His mouth crashed onto mine, all teeth and heat and desperation. There was no romance, no tenderness. It was pure, unfiltered need. He tasted like blood and whiskey in the storm. His hand left my throat, tangled in my hair, and fisted, holding my head in place as he plundered. I was too shocked to move, to respond, to do anything but hold on. My body was alight, a forest fire of terror and a wild, secret, terrible want. This was the viper, wounded, lethal, and he was kissing me like he was trying to inhale my soul. It lasted an eternity. It lasted a second. He broke away with a ragged gasp, his forehead resting against mine. His eyes were closed, his body trembling with the effort. You're the only clean thing, he breathed. And then, like a puppet with its strings cut, his eyes rolled back. His grip on my hair went slack. His entire massive weight slumped forward. He passed out, his bloody head collapsing onto my shoulder, his breathing shallow. I was left in the wreckage. Kneeling on my floor, covered in his blood, my lips bruised and burning, my entire world tilted on its axis. I was shaking so hard I could barely function. I was terrified. And God help me, I had never felt more alive.
Chapter 3. Nico pain woke me. It wasn't the sharp, immediate agony of the ambush, but a deep, throbbing, metallic ache that seemed to have settled into my very bones. My side was a bonfire. My ribs were a cage of hot coals. My first thought was, ambush, S-class, blood. My second thought was, I'm alive. My third, as I forced my eyes open, was, where the hell am I? The ceiling wasn't the high, ornate plaster of my compound bedroom. It was low, white, and simple. The air didn't smell of old money, leather, and my father's cigar smoke. It smelled sweet, like vanilla, sugar, and a yeast. I was on a couch, a small beige couch, a fact I registered with disgust as I saw the massive, dark, rust-colored stain I'd left on the cushions. My suit was ruined. My shirt was gone, replaced by a thick, clean towel taped clumsily but effectively over a padded wound at my side. Then I saw her. Elena. She was asleep, folded into a cushioned armchair in the corner of the small room, a wool blanket pulled up to her chin. Her head was tilted at an awkward angle, her dark hair spilling over the armrest. She looked young, innocent, untouched, and my stomach hollowed out. The memories came back in a rush, not as a clear timeline, but as violent sensory snapshots. The thud of my body against her door, the scent of her, flour and rain, the impossibly bright, clean kitchen, the feel of her small, terrified hands on my skin, the kiss. Fanculo. I didn't just break the code. I didn't just betray Marco. I'd taken his one protected, clean thing and smeared my bloody handprint all over it. I had brought the war to her doorstep, bled on her floor, and then, like some kind of animal, I had claimed her. That kiss. It hadn't been a kiss. It had been a brand, a desperate, possessive act of a dying man, and it was the most unforgivable thing I'd done all night. I was the Viper. My entire life was built on control. Control over my men, my territory, my emotions, and last night, I had lost it all. I looked at her again, and this time all I felt was a cold, sharp rage. It wasn't directed at her. It was at myself. She was asleep in a chair, in her own home, because she had been too afraid to sleep in her own bed while I was bleeding out 10 feet away. This was my fault. I had contaminated her. I sat up, a guttural groan tearing from my chest. The bonfire in my side roared to an inferno, and black spots danced in my vision. I clamped my jaw shut, riding the wave of agony. The sound woke her. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide and unfocused for a second. They cleared, and they found me. Fear. That was the first thing I saw. She clutched the blanket to her chest. "You're awake," she whispered, her voice rough with sleep. "Get me my phone," I growled. My voice was a rusty grate. She just stared at me. "My phone," I repeated louder. "And my gun. Where are they?" On the kitchen counter." She slowly got to her feet, putting the chair between us like a lion tamer. "Smart girl. I'll get you some coffee." "I don't want coffee." I used the arm of the couch to haul myself to my feet. The room spun. I locked my knees, refusing to show weakness. "I want my goddamn phone." I stalked past her, into the small kitchen area. My blood-soaked shirt was in a heap on the floor. My 1911 and my cracked phone were on her small, clean counter, right next to a bowl of lemons. The contrast was a slap in the face. My world of steel and death sitting next to her civilian life. I snatched the gun, checking the mag and chamber by pure muscle memory, then tucked it into the waistband of my ruined pants. I grabbed my phone. It was dead. "Do you have a charger?" Yeah." She pointed to a white cord by her coffee maker. I plugged it in, ignoring the way she flinched as I moved. I leaned against the counter, the pain making me want to double over. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. "You look awful," she said quietly. I turned to look at her. She was wearing gray sweatpants and a thin t-shirt that hung off one shoulder. No bra. I registered the soft curve of her collarbone, the shadow between her breasts, and the fact that I had no business registering any of it. This was the problem. This was why Marco's rule existed. "And you're a child," I bit out, the words colder than I intended. A child playing nurse. What I look like is none of your business. Her face, which had been pale with fear, flushed a deep, angry red. I'm not a child. Right. You're a baker. You just patched a gunshot wound. Was that before or after the cannolis this morning? I saved your life, she whispered, her voice trembling, but not with fear, with anger. You put a towel on a wound. Don't flatter yourself. I needed her to hate me. I needed her to be so angry, so disgusted, that she would never, ever want to be in the same room with me again. It was the only way to protect her. Now, this never happened. You never saw me. You never fixed me. We clear? I pushed off the counter, my phone having just enough juice to power on. I saw a dozen missed calls. My father, Marco, Fanculo. I started for the door. I had to get out. I had to clean up my mess, find the mole, and deal with my father. Is that it? She asked, her voice sharp. I stopped, my hand on the doorknob. We're done here. You kiss me like that. You bleed all over my home. You terrify me. And then you just walk out? I turned, slow. The kiss, I said, my voice flat, was a mistake. A reaction to blood loss. Forget it. Forget it. She repeated the words, her voice hollow. Yes, forget it. I needed to make the final cut. I pulled my wallet from my back pocket. It was still damp. I yanked out every bit of cash I had, a thick stack of hundreds. Maybe $1,000, maybe $2. I threw it on her kitchen table, the bills scattered over the wood. For the couch, I said, and for your silence. Now we're done. I turned, back to the door. I never even saw her move. Her hand slapped the money. Not a weak push, a full-on, open-palmed slap that sent the bills cascading onto the floor. I'm not one of your whores, Nico. My head snapped back to her. My blood went cold. She was breathing hard, her small frame vibrating with pure, unadulterated rage. Her eyes were blazing, and there wasn't a trace of fear left in them. There was just steel. I didn't patch you up for your money. I did it. I did it because you were dying. And I am not a child. And I am not for sale. No one had ever spoken to me like that. Not my father, not my rivals, not even Marco. My world was built on fear. People either respected me or they feared me. And this baker, covered in my blood, was looking at me like I was dirt on her floor. And God help me. It was the most intoxicating thing I had ever seen. I moved before I'd even processed the thought. In 2 long strides, I had her. I backed her against the wall, my hand slamming flat against the plaster next to her head. I caged her in. My body was screaming in protest. My side a white-hot agony, but the adrenaline was back, sharp and potent. I was too close. I could smell the vanilla on her skin from last night's baking, the sleep on her breath, and the sharp, female scent of her. Her chest was heaving, her eyes wide, but she didn't back down. She was still glaring at me, defiant. You have no idea what you're playing with, Piccola, I whispered, the words a low growl. My face was inches from hers. I watched her pupils dilate. You don't scare me, Nico, she breathed, a perfect, beautiful lie. I could feel the frantic pulse hammering in her throat, could see it. I should, I murmured. I'm the man your brother warned you about. I'm the monster in the dark. And you? I leaned in, my nose brushing the hair at her temple. I inhaled. Sugar. You're just a girl in a bakery. I wanted to kiss her. The urge was so strong, so primal, it was a physical punch to the gut. I wanted to devour that defiant mouth. I wanted to push her up against the wall and finish what I'd started last night. I wanted to erase the memory of Isabella, of the ambush, of the blood, and just lose myself in her. And that terrified me more than any bullet. This was how it happened. This was how you got weak. This was how you got a bullet in the back. I shoved myself away from her, the movement so abrupt it made me see stars. I stumbled back, grabbing the counter for support. I looked at her one last time. She was still against the wall, her knuckles white where she gripped the counter. "Forget my face," I snarled. "Forget this night. If you're smart, you'll pray to God you never see me again. If you breathe a word of this to anyone, especially Marco, I'll know, and you'll regret it." It was a hollow threat, and we both knew it. The real threat wasn't me. It was the world I was walking back into. I turned, and this time I didn't stop. I yanked the door open and limped out into the gray, rainy dawn, leaving the scattered money, my bloodstain, and the only clean thing I'd touched in a decade, all behind.
Chapter 4. Elena. For 3 days, I lived in a state of suspended animation. I scrubbed the blood from my linoleum floor until my hands were raw. I threw a heavy quilt over the ruined sofa upstairs, unable to look at the dark, accusing stain. I went to the bakery. I baked, I mixed dough, I piped cannolis, I sold croissants, and I smiled at customers. I smiled while my insides were vibrating with a high, taut-wire tension that never, ever stopped. I was living in the after the blood, after the kiss, after the threat, after the money scattered on my floor. Every time the bell on the shop door jingled, my heart would try to claw its way out of my chest, half praying, half terrifyingly certain it would be him. But it was just Mrs. DeLuca for her morning scally bread, or Mr. Henderson for his Danish. It was normal. It was painfully normal. My life, which had been a simple, black and white sketch, was now a chaotic, terrifying watercolor, the colors bleeding into each other. He had come in, ripped the canvas, and left. And he'd left me with a dangerous, humming new awareness. I was angry. I was humiliated. And I was, God help me, bored. The normalcy I had cherished now felt like a cage. On the third night, I was cashing out the register, my mind a dull fog, when my phone vibrated on the counter. I never got texts this late. My thumbprint unlocked the screen. "Unknown number, we need to talk." My blood didn't run cold. It ignited. I didn't have to ask who it was. The sheer arrogance of the text, the total lack of introduction, was a signature. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was anger. It was a dark, electric thrill that shamed me. My thumbs hovered over the screen. "Who is this?" I typed. Then I deleted it. "Lame." "Go to hell," I typed. Deleted. Before I could think of a reply that adequately conveyed my rage, a second text came through. "Unknown number. It's not a request. And not at your place. Too compromised." My heart hammered. Compromised. A word from his world. A word that acknowledged he had, in fact, contaminated mine. A third text came. An address for a high-rise in the financial district. A sleek, anonymous glass tower I'd only ever seen from the freeway. 8 p.m., 12th floor, penthouse B, key code is 1101. I stared at the screen. He wasn't asking. He was summoning, after threatening me, after throwing money at me like I was a whore. He was a monster. He was an arrogant, cold-hearted bastard. My brother would kill him. I looked at the clock. 7:15 p.m. I was going to be late. The high-rise was the opposite of my bakery. My world was warm, cluttered, and smelled of life. This place was cold, silent, and smelled of nothing but steel and expensive, recycled air. My heart was a hummingbird in my throat as the elevator slid silently up to the 12th floor. The hallway was a long, gray corridor, so quiet I could hear my own pulse. "This is stupid, Elena. This is the stupidest, most reckless thing you have ever done." I stood in front of the heavy, dark wood door of penthouse B. I didn't knock. I typed in the code, 101 some row 1. The lock clicked, an obnoxiously loud sound. I pushed the door open. The apartment was dark, lit only by the sprawling, glittering panorama of the city through a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows. And he was there. He wasn't the wounded man from my sofa. He was the Capo. He stood by the window, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He wore a simple, dark gray Henley that fit his shoulders and arms like a second skin, and black pants. He was clean, healed, and lethal. He was the most beautiful and terrifying thing I had ever seen. He didn't turn. "You shouldn't have come." "You shouldn't have texted," I shot back, my voice surprisingly steady. I closed the door behind me, the click sealing my fate. He turned then slow. His eyes raked over me. I was still in my bakery clothes, jeans, a simple t-shirt, and an apron I'd forgotten to take off. I felt small, dusty with flour, and pathetically out of my depth. "It was a test," he said, his voice a low rumble. "One you failed." "No," I said, untying my apron strings, my hands fumbling. I balled it up and threw it on a sleek leather chair. "I'm not one of your soldiers, Nico. You don't get to test me." He moved, and I flinched. It was a tiny, involuntary movement, but he saw it. His eyes narrowed. He stopped a good 10 feet away. "Why are you here, Elena?" "I wanted to see if you were as much of an ass when you weren't bleeding to death on my floor." A flicker of something. Not humor, not surprise. Maybe respect. He took a sip of his whiskey. "I am," he said flatly. "You should go. After you summoned me, after I drove all the way across town, you can go to hell." He set the glass down. "This can't happen. What you did, it was a debt. I owed you for my life. The money was you trying to wipe the slate clean," I finished for him, my anger rising. "To put me back in my civilian box and pretend you never bled on it. It was an insult." "It was a necessity," he snapped, his control finally breaking. He stalked toward me, and this time I held my ground. He was a force of nature, all coiled energy and dark rage. He stopped an inch from me, crowding me, forcing me to crane my neck to look up at him. "You don't get it, do you? You're a liability, a weakness. What I did was try to protect you." "By threatening me," I scoffed. "By scaring you," he roared, his voice bouncing off the glass. "By making you hate me so much you'd run if you ever saw me again. But you're not running, are you? You're standing here in my apartment, smelling like sugar and acting like you're not in a shark tank." "Maybe I'm sick of being treated like a child," I shoved him. My hand splayed flat against the solid wall of his chest. It was like pushing granite. "Maybe I'm sick of Marco's rules and your rules, and this whole world telling me what I am and where I belong." His hands clamped down on my wrists, his grip a steel trap. The air was gone, sucked from the room. There was nothing but the few inches between us, electric with a tension so thick it was a physical weight. "You want rules?" he whispered, his voice dropping to a dangerous, intimate growl. "Fine. Here are the rules. Rule 1, you never speak of me to anyone, ever. Rule 2, you never come here or anywhere unless I call. Rule 3, no one, and I mean no one, especially Marco, can ever know. He asks, you lie. Can you lie, Elena?" I was breathless. He was so close I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "You're trying to scare me off again." "I'm trying to keep you alive," he hissed. "This is a game you can't win." "And what if I don't want to win?" I breathed. "What if I just want to play?" That broke him. His mouth crashed down on mine. It wasn't the desperate, bloody kiss from the bakery. This was intentional. This was a conquest. It was a raw, punishing kiss that was all him, dark, possessive, and utterly intoxicating. He wasn't asking. He was taking. He kissed me like he hated me. He kissed me like he'd been starving. My hands, still trapped in his, were useless. I couldn't fight. I couldn't pull him closer. I could only take it. And then I kissed him back. I strained against his grip, my mouth fighting his. It was a battle, a clash of wills, a silent, furious argument. His tongue swept my lips, and I let him in. A small, choked gasp escaping me. His grip on my wrists loosened, his hand sliding up my arms to cage my face. He gentled, just for a second. The kiss changed. It slowed. It deepened. It became a kiss of pure, agonizing discovery. He tilted his head, tasting me, learning me, and I was lost. My hands were free, and they tangled in the soft fabric of his Henley, clutching him, holding on as the world tilted and spun. He broke the kiss, but only to rest his forehead against mine. We were both breathing hard, ragged. "You're playing with fire, Piccola," he murmured, his voice thick. "I know," I breathed, my eyes still closed. "I like the heat." Later, I don't know how much later, the spell was broken by the sound of my own stomach growling loudly. Nico pulled back, a look of almost comical confusion on his face. I flushed, mortified. I didn't have dinner." He stared at me for a beat. Then the most amazing thing happened. He laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It was a short, sharp, rusty sound, like a piece of machinery that hadn't been used in a decade. But it was real. "You're unbelievable," he said, shaking his head. He let me go and walked into the kitchen, which was as sterile and cold as the rest of the apartment. He opened a refrigerator that contained only water, vodka, and a jar of olives. "Don't you eat?" I asked, following him. He just grunted, grabbing a bottle of water. "I don't live here. It's a safe house." I pulled out my phone. "What do you want?" "What? To eat. What do you want?" He looked completely lost. "I don't. Chinese, pizza, Thai?" He just stared. I rolled my eyes, opened a delivery app, and ordered an obscene amount of Chinese food from a place down the street. An hour later, we were sitting on his billion-dollar leather sofa, eating greasy kung pao chicken straight from the white paper boxes. He was, as I'd suspected, hopelessly clumsy with chopsticks. He kept trying, his brow furrowed in a concentration I'd only seen him use for, I imagined, loading a gun. "Here," I said, plucking a stray piece of broccoli off his expensive pants. "Just use the fork, you big viper." He shot me a look, but he took the plastic fork. "You think this is funny?" "I think," I said, growing bold, "that the big, bad dawn of the Bianchi family being taken down by a spring roll is pretty hilarious, yeah." He watched me, his expression unreadable, but the hard lines around his mouth had softened. "Why the bakery, Elena? You're smart. You could have done anything." I shrugged, my chest warming. "No one ever asked me that." "I don't know. My nonna taught me. It's real. You take flour, water, yeast, nothing. And you make something. You make bread. You make people happy. It's not about the money. It's mine. No one can take it from me." He was quiet for a long time, just watching me. "That's good," he said, so softly I almost missed it. "What about you?" I asked, before I could stop myself. "Did you always want this? You know?" The relaxed, almost normal man disappeared. The Capo was back. He looked away from me, out at the glittering, indifferent city. "It's not about want. It was never a choice. It's a duty." He paused. "My father. He sees the world a certain way. I see it another." He was showing me a crack, a tiny hairline fracture in his armor, a glimpse of the man in the cage. He wasn't just a monster. He was a prisoner. It was late, nearly 2 a.m., when I finally said I had to go. The mood was heavy again, the reality of our world settling back in. He just nodded, his face grim. "I'll have someone?" "No," he said. "I'll take you." "No, absolutely not. You can't be seen at my place. I'll get a cab." He didn't like it, but I was insistent. I grabbed my apron from the chair, my skin humming. My lips were still swollen, my body alive. I was giddy and terrified all at once. He walked me to the elevator. The silence was thick. "Nico," I said as the doors slid open. "Elena, thank you for well, not for the rules, for the food." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Good night, Elena." I got in, and the doors slid shut. I leaned against the wall, my heart a confusing mix of joy and dread. The elevator opened onto the empty, silent lobby. I was floating. I stepped out and froze. My blood turned to pure Arctic ice. At the far end of the lobby, by the security desk, stood my brother, Marco. He wasn't looking my way. He was talking to one of Nico's men, a mountain named Leo, and he looked furious. His face was dark, his posture rigid. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I shrank back, flattening myself against a large concrete pillar, my heart trying to escape my body. Marco's voice was low, but it carried in the marble expanse. "Don't know what's wrong with him," Marco was saying, his voice a low, angry growl. "He's been distracted. He's off his game. He's making mistakes. And I swear to God, Leo, if I find out he's anywhere near my sister, I don't care if he's my capo. I'll put a bullet in him myself. I mean it. Leo just nodded, his face stone. Marco clapped him on the shoulder, a hard, angry gesture. Find out what's distracting him and fix it. He turned and stormed out the front glass doors, disappearing into a waiting black car. I stayed flattened against the pillar, my legs shaking so violently I thought I would collapse. My giddy romantic haze evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp terror. This wasn't a game. This wasn't a romance. This was a war, and I wasn't just standing in the middle of it. I was the cause. I was going to get them all killed.
Chapter 5. Nico. I hated these dinners. They were a relic of my father's regime, a weekly performance of familia and power that had nothing to do with family and everything to do with control. The Bianchi compound dining room was a mausoleum. The 30-foot table of polished mahogany, so dark it looked black, reflected the oil paintings of our dead, scowling ancestors. The air was thick with the scent of old money, wax, and my father's disapproval. He sat at the head of the table. Don Valerio Bianchi, a lion in winter. He was still powerful, but his power was rooted in a world that no longer existed, a world of handshake alliances and ancient, dusty codes. My world was logistics, data, and ruthless, bloodless expansion. We were at war over the soul of the family, and this silent 3-course meal was our battlefield. You are distracted, Niccolo. My father's voice, a low gravel, sliced through the silence. I didn't look up from the rack of lamb I had no intention of eating. I kept my gaze cool, neutral. I'm busy, I said. You are distracted, he repeated, his fork clinking against the china. First, you get yourself ambushed. You're sloppy. You look weak. The other capos, they are talking. They say the viper has lost his fangs. The problem from the ambush has been handled, I said, my voice flat. I'd spent the last 2 days cleaning house, eliminating the crew that had attacked me, but I still hadn't found the source. I hadn't found the mole. It is not handled, he snapped. An alliance is broken. Our friends in Milan are nervous. You made a mess, Niccolo, and you refuse to clean it up. You need to show strength. You need to fix what you broke. The air crackled. I finally looked up. His eyes, dark and faded, were boring into me. This wasn't a dinner. It was a summons. It was a setup. He was boxing me in. And what do you suggest, Padre? I suggest, he said, taking a slow sip of his wine, that you remember what loyalty is, that you remember who your friends are. As if on cue, the heavy oak doors of the dining room swung open. Our butler, a man as old and dusty as the paintings, stood in the doorway. Don Valerio, he announced, his voice reedy. You have a visitor, Signorina Isabella Vescovi. My blood didn't just run cold. It froze. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My hand, which had been resting on the table, slowly curled into a fist, my nails digging into my palm. This wasn't an attack. This was an ambush of a different, more venomous kind. She glided in. Isabella Vescovi. My ex-fiancée. The snake. She was exactly as I remembered, all poison and silk. She was poured into a blood-red dress that was cut so low and so high, it was a marvel of engineering. Her black hair was pulled back in a severe, sleek knot, and she smelled of a perfume so heavy and cloying, it made my teeth ache. It was a scent designed to invade, to claim territory. It was the opposite of sugar and vanilla. She ignored me completely, her eyes fixed on my father. She was a politician, and she knew her audience. Valerio, caro, she purred, bending to kiss both his wrinkled cheeks. You look wonderful. Forgive me for being so late. Isabella, my dear, you are right on time, my father said, beaming. He hadn't looked at me with that much warmth in a decade. "Thank you for coming. You remember my son?" She turned to me then, her red lacquered lips pulling back in a smile that was all teeth. "Nicky, darling," she cooed, the sound of her voice, the use of that name grating on my last nerve. "It's been too long." She slid into the empty chair beside me, the one my father had intentionally left open. She was so close I could feel the heat radiating off her skin. "You look tired," she whispered, her voice dropping to an intimate, conspiratorial level. She placed her hand on my arm, her long nails scraping lightly over the fabric of my suit. "All that work you've been doing. It must be exhausting, running the city all by yourself." I stared at her hand on my arm until she, with a small, unamused laugh, finally moved it. "Her father and I had a long talk," my father announced, as if I weren't even there. "The Vescovi family and the Bianchi family, we are stronger together. This foolishness between you two has gone on long enough." I finally spoke, my voice a low, lethal hum. "This foolishness, as you call it, was treason. Or did you forget she leaked my shipping routes to the Albanians?" Isabella gasped, a perfect theatrical gesture of hurt. "I explained that, Nicky. It was a mistake, a misunderstanding. I was trying to manage the situation, to prove my value to you." "You proved it," I said. "Enough!" my father roared, his fist hitting the table. "The Vescovis are our oldest allies. You in your arrogance severed that bond. You will fix it. You will apologize to Isabella. You will reopen the engagement." The room was silent. I looked from my father's flushed, angry face to Isabella's smug, triumphant one. She had him. She had played the part of the penitent daughter, and he had lapped it up. He was a dinosaur, and she was the meteor he was cheering for. She was his weapon against me. "No," I said. "It is not a request." "No." My voice was flat, final. Isabella's smile tightened. She leaned in again, her voice a venomous whisper meant only for me. "My father is so disappointed. Our families are distant. He worries you're not seeing the big picture, Nicky. He worries you're letting something small cloud your judgment. Something or someone." I was a coiled spring, my entire body rigid with a control that was costing me everything. And then, my phone, dark and silent on the table, vibrated. It was a small sound, almost lost in the cavernous room. But in that high-stakes silence, it was a gunshot. I looked down. A text. "Elena, just checking in. Hope you're safe." My reaction was instantaneous. It was so microscopic. It was a millisecond of a mistake. But in this viper's den, a millisecond was all it took. My shoulders, which had been rigid with tension, dropped. The knot in my gut, wound tight by Isabella's presence, loosened. A breath I didn't even know I was holding escaped me. My thumb hovered over the screen, the ghost of a smile, a softening, touching my lips before I could crush it. It was involuntary. It was a reflex. It was the most stupid, reckless, human thing I could have done. I looked up. Isabella wasn't looking at the phone. She was looking at me. Her eyes were no longer playful. They were sharp, assessing, predatory. The smug smile was gone, replaced by a look of pure, cold calculation. Click. She hadn't seen the text. She hadn't seen the name. She didn't need to. She had seen me. She had seen the crack in the armor. She had found the weakness. She didn't know what it was, but she knew with the certainty of a shark scenting blood that it existed. "Ah," she breathed, her voice dropping, all fake sympathy gone. I see. Her smile returned, but this time it was real. It was terrifying. A distraction, she purred, leaning back in her chair, victorious. A little piccola? Is that what has you so unfocused, Nikki? A new toy? She laughed, a light, tinkling sound that echoed in the oppressive silence. How disappointing. I thought you had better taste. My control shattered. I was on my feet, my chair scraping back with a sound so violent it was like a scream. I threw my napkin onto the table. This dinner is over. Niccolo, my father bellowed. Sit down. You will not. No. I stared, not at my father, but at Isabella. You want to have dinner with this? Fine, but I'm done. I stormed out of the dining room, ignoring my father's apoplectic roar of my name. I was already dialing Marco as I hit the front hall. My car, now. I was in the driver's seat in 30 seconds, the engine of my new sedan roaring to life. I wasn't thinking. I was moving, possessive, furious, and for the first time in my life, truly terrified. Isabella was a hunter, and she had just caught the scent. I drove, not to the safe house, not to my office. I was on autopilot, breaking every traffic law, my only coherent thought a litany of no, no, no. I had to see her. I had to know she was safe. I had to cleanse myself of the poison Isabella had injected into the night. I parked 3 blocks away in the dark and walked. The night air was cold, but I was burning. I used the key I'd had made, a copy of her backdoor code, and let myself in. The bakery was dark, the air thick with the comforting smell of her, vanilla, sugar, life. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my heart a heavy, desperate drum. The door to her apartment was ajar. I pushed it open. She was there. She wasn't baking. She was curled up on her small, worn sofa, the one I'd bled on, reading a book, her gray sweatpants and a simple t-shirt, soft in the lamplight. She looked up, her eyes wide, a gasp catching in her throat. Nico, you scared me. I texted. Is everything... Are you okay? You look... I didn't let her finish. I crossed the room in 2 strides. I needed to touch her. I needed to confirm she was real, that she was here, that she was safe, that she was mine. I wasn't gentle, I was desperate. I cupped her face, my hands hard, my thumbs stroking her soft jaw. I stared at her, my eyes raking over her face like I was a dying man trying to memorize the sun. Her book thudded to the floor. Nico, what's wrong? She whispered, her hands coming up to rest on my wrists. You're scaring me. You're shaking. I hadn't even realized. She's back, I rasped, the words torn from me. I watched her process it. Her eyes widened, her posture stiffened. She didn't have to ask. Isabella. I didn't answer. I just hauled her to her feet and kissed her. It wasn't a battle like the last time, or a brand like the first. It was a plea. It was a desperate, raw, emotional claiming. I kissed her like I was trying to erase the poison of Isabella's perfume, the coldness of my father's ambition. I was trying to breathe in her sugar, vanilla, life. My hand slid into her hair, fisting the soft strands, holding her to me. She made a small, wounded sound in the back of her throat, her arms wrapping around my neck, holding on just as tight. This was it. This is the weakness, a cold voice in my head whispered. This is the girl who will get you killed. This is the one who will burn your world to the ground. I kissed her deeper, trying to silence the voice. She was the one clean thing, and I had just painted a target on her back. I was falling. I was terrified. And I was completely, utterly lost. I held her in the quiet warmth of her small, safe apartment, her head tucked under my chin, my nose buried in her hair. I had just walked out of one war, and I knew, with absolute soul-crushing certainty, I had just started a new one. And this time, I had no idea how to win.
Chapter 6. Elena. I spent the next 2 days in a state of fractured bliss. Nico's desperate, possessive visit after his dinner had marked me. I was living a double life, and the sheer velocity of it was intoxicating. By day, I was Elena Rossi, baker. I smiled. I kneaded dough. I packed cookies for school children, my hands dusted with flour. By night, I was his. We met at the safe house, a sterile glass box that I was slowly turning into a home. I brought groceries. I left a toothbrush. We'd sit on the floor, eating takeout, and he would just watch me. He'd listen. He'd talk about his day, not in specifics, but in shades of frustration, his father, the old guard, the headaches of a changing business, and he would touch me, not just with the desperate, claiming hunger of that first night, but with a quiet, stunned reverence. He'd trace the flour smudges on my cheek, his thumb rough. He'd bury his face in my hair and just breathe. Like I was oxygen. I was in love. It was a stupid, reckless, dangerous love, and I didn't care. I was the girl in the eye of the hurricane, and in his arms I felt perfectly, terrifyingly safe. The bell on my shop door jingled, pulling me from a daydream about his rare, rusty laugh. I looked up, a bright, practiced, "Welcome in," on my lips. The words died in my throat. She was not a customer. She was an oil painting, dark and venomous. She stood just inside the door, her stilettos silent on my worn wooden floor, her eyes sweeping over my humble shop with a look of profound, theatrical boredom. She was in a red dress, so sharp and severe, it looked like it had been sculpted from glass. Her black hair pulled into a knot that looked tight enough to cause pain. She smelled like a hothouse, an oppressive, expensive cloud of jasmine and something musky. Isabella Vescovi. My hands, which were shaping brioche dough, froze. The soft, pliable dough suddenly felt like cold, wet clay. "Well," she said, her voice a low, smooth purr, "isn't this quaint?" She glided forward, her eyes missing nothing, the chipped paint on my display case, the dusting of flour on my apron, the small, faded photo of me and Marco pinned to the corkboard. "You must be the baker," she said, stopping at the counter. She didn't look at me, she looked at the pastries, her nose wrinkling just slightly. How sweet. My blood was ice. This was the woman who had haunted Nico's past, the snake he'd spoken of with such cold fury. And she was here, in my shop, in my world. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I wiped my hands on my apron, a nervous, useless gesture. I doubt it. She finally turned her gaze on me. It was like being inspected by a coroner. Her eyes, dark and perfectly almond-shaped, raked over me from my messy bun down to my flour-dusted clogs. She was assessing me, dissecting me, and dismissing me. "I'll have an espresso," she said, snapping her fingers lightly. "Black. And make it. Quick, I have places to be." I moved on autopilot, my hands shaking as I turned to the machine. I could feel her eyes on my back, a physical weight. I was a mouse, and she was a very, very patient cat. I placed the small, steaming cup on the counter. She didn't reach for it. "He gets bored, you know," she said, her voice conversational, as if we were discussing the weather. I froze, my hand still on the cup. I don't know what you mean." "Oh, Kara," she laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Don't play stupid. It's the one thing you're probably not. I'm talking about Nicky." The sound of his name, that name, from her lips made me feel physically ill. "He's a capo, little girl, not a baker's boy." She picked up the espresso, swirled it, and placed it back down, all without drinking. "He likes his toys. He loves new shiny things. And then he breaks them, or he gets bored. And he always comes back to what he knows. He always comes back to me." "I think you should leave," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm not finished." Her smile vanished. The temperature in the shop dropped 20 degrees. "You are in a world you cannot possibly understand. You're a pastry, a momentary distraction. I am his future. I am his family's choice. You're an embarrassment." She leaned in, her toxic perfume washing over me, making me want to gag. This is your one and only warning. Get out, now. End your little affair and disappear. Because if you don't, I will make you, and you will not believe the things I am capable of. You'll be crushed, and he won't even sweep up the crumbs. She straightened up, her smile back, bright and false. You're not built for his world, Apiccola. You're all soft dough. You'll never, ever be steel. She turned, her red-soled heels clicking on the floor, and glided out, the bell jingling her departure. She never touched her coffee. I stood there, my hands still on the counter, my entire body vibrating. The bakery, my sanctuary, had been violated. It no longer felt safe. It felt like a target. Her perfume hung in the air, a declaration of war. I was jumpy all day. Every customer who walked in made me flinch. I was scrubbing the counter for the 10th time, trying to erase the lingering scent of her, when the back door opened. I screamed, whirling around, my hand grabbing the nearest weapon, the French rolling pin. Whoa, Lena! Calma! Marco. He stood in the doorway, his hands up in mock surrender, but his face wasn't amused. He looked exhausted. He looked wrong. The warm, protective older brother was gone. This was the soldado, his face grim and shadowed. Marco! I gasped, lowering the rolling pin. My heart was a trapped bird against my ribs. You scared me to death. What's wrong with you? He asked, not moving, his eyes scanning the bakery. You're white as a ghost. And why are you holding that thing like you're going to kill someone? Just a long day, I lied. My voice thin. I'm jumpy, that's all. He walked in, his gaze sharp. He looked at me. Really? Looked at me, and I felt like a bug under a microscope. He knew I was lying. You've been quiet, Lena, he said, his voice too casual. Distant. You don't call Mama as much. You're always busy. I am busy, I said, turning away, scrubbing the counter again. The holidays are coming up. It's a lot of work. Right. The work. He was quiet for a long, agonizing moment. I was in the financial district last night. Saw you coming out of that new glass tower, the Evum. Late. My blood didn't just run cold, it evaporated. I stopped scrubbing. I had a late catering order, I stammered, my mind racing. A corporate client, penthouse. A corporate client, he repeated, his voice dead flat. That's what you're calling it. Marco, what is this? I'm worried about you. He walked toward me, his face etched with a pained sincerity. This world, my world. I've tried so hard to keep you clean of it, and I feel like I'm losing you. You're not losing me, I whispered, my throat thick with guilt. He looked so tired. Then talk to me, Lena. Tell me what's going on. If someone is bothering you. No one is bothering me. Then why are you lying to me? He snapped, his voice cracking. I'm not. As the words left my mouth, my phone, sitting face up on the counter, vibrated. We both looked at it. A text message from a number I'd saved as N. N! Stay away from the windows tonight. Trouble in the South Ward. Stay safe. I'll see you tomorrow. Time stopped. Marco didn't move. He just stared at the screen. I watched the color drain from his face, replaced by a sick, dawning comprehension. Trouble in the South Ward. That wasn't a civilian alert. That was their business. That was Nico's territory. Elena, he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. Who is N? I couldn't speak. I just shook my head, tears welling, my throat closing. Who is it? He roared, his fist slamming down on the counter, making me jump. Marco, please. No, tell me. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip painfully tight. He already knew. I could see it in his eyes, a cocktail of pure, unadulterated terror and betrayal. You're seeing someone. Someone from my world. Marco, please, you don't understand. Tell me it's not him, he begged, his voice breaking. Lena, hump her favor. Look at me and tell me it's not Nico. Tell me it's not him. My silence was a confession. He released me, stumbling back like I'd physically struck him. Oh, Dio. No, 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 no. He ran his hands through his hair, his breath catching, pure panic in his eyes. What have you done, Elena? What have you done? I love him, Marco. The words burst out of me, the first time I'd ever said them aloud to anyone but Nico. Love? He spat the word as if it were poison. You think he loves. He doesn't love Elena. He consumes. He destroys. He'll get you killed. He's not like that. He's exactly like that. Do you have any idea what is happening right now? Isabella's back. The Vescovi alliance is back on the table. The family is a goddamn war zone. His father's on his back, and you... He looked at me, his face a mask of horrified realization. You're not his love. You're his weakness. You're a liability. You're the one thing they can use to break him. He was pacing, frantic, a caged, terrified animal. He puts you in the middle of this, that bastardo! I'll kill him! No, he whirled on me. It's over, Elena. You hear me? It's done. You will never see him again. You will not call him. You will not text him. He snatched my phone from the counter. Marco, no, give it back! So I can be sure, he yelled. You're out. As of tonight. You are out. I am ending this. You can't do that. You can't just... I am your brother, he roared, his voice cracking with a pain so deep it stunned me into silence. My one job in this godforsaken life was to keep you safe, and I failed. He looked at me, his eyes full of a broken, terrible resolve. He will not have you. I will not let him destroy you. He didn't say another word. He just turned, my phone in his hand, and stormed out the back door, slamming it so hard the entire wall of baking sheets rattled. I collapsed against the counter, my legs giving out. I was alone, truly, utterly alone. In a single day, I had been threatened by my enemy and imprisoned by my family. Isabella, with her cold, silky threats, had been terrifying. But Marco, with his raw, heartbroken panic, was so much worse. He'd taken my phone. He'd cut me off. I was trapped in my bakery, my sanctuary, which now felt like nothing but a brightly lit cage. I had no one to turn to. And the man I loved, the man who had just told me to stay safe, had no idea that the walls were closing in.
Chapter 7. Nico. I was summoned. The text was from my father's consigliere, a one-word order. Study. It was a trap. I knew it the way an animal knows the scent of a snare. After Isabella's performance at dinner, after my storming out, this was not an invitation. It was a checkmate. I walked into the lion's den. My father's study was a mausoleum of old-world power, all dark mahogany, suffocating cigar smoke, and the judgmental stares of dead Bianchis in oil-painted frames. My father, Don Valerio, sat behind his massive, ornate desk, a king on his throne. But he wasn't alone. My blood turned to sludge. Standing near the window, his posture rigid, his face a gray mask of exhaustion and defeat, was Marco. Marco, I said, my voice a low, cold warning. This was a breach. Marco reported to me. His presence here in this room was an act of treason. He is here at my request, my father said, steepling his fingers. He looked smug, triumphant. He had all his pieces in place. This is not your concern, Padre. Oh, but it is, my father said, his voice laced with a silk I'd never heard from him. It was the sound of victory. Your little distraction has been dealt with. I didn't look at my father. I looked at Marco, my best friend, my brother. His gaze finally met mine, and what I saw in them wasn't defiance. It was a hollow, gut-wrenching despair. Tell him, Marco, my father ordered. Marco's voice was rough. I went to her. I saw a text. You... What? She's my sister, Nico, he burst out, his voice cracking, the soldato gone, replaced by a terrified older brother. What choice did you give me? You put her in the crosshairs. You put a target on her. Do you have any idea what you've done? I am protecting her, I snarled, taking a step toward him. By hiding her? Marco laughed, a broken, bitter sound. You can't. Isabella was at her shop, Nico. She was at the goddamn bakery. The floor dropped out from under me. Isabella had been to Elena. The rage that flooded my system was so pure, so white-hot, it was almost paralyzing. I wasn't just angry. I was homicidal. The room tilted. I finally understood Marco's panic. I finally understood the checkmate. "This is the end of your childish rebellion," my father said, his voice slicing through my rage. "You are a capo, or you were. You have embarrassed this family. You have shown weakness. You have allowed your appetites to endanger a critical alliance. You have made us look like fools." I turned to him, my fury a living, breathing thing. That snake is your fiancée," my father roared, slamming his fist on the desk. "The alliance is back on. The Vescovis are waiting. You will end this pathetic affair with the baker's girl, and you will marry Isabella. You will consolidate our power. You will do your duty." I stared at him, my breath coming in short, sharp huffs. I saw it all. The ambush he called sloppy, his fury at my distraction, his invitation to Isabella. He had orchestrated this. He had used Isabella to box me in. "No," I said. "It is not a choice," he bellowed. "Do you think you have one? You will do this, or you are no longer my son." The words hung in the stale, smoky air. "You are disowned," he said, his voice dropping to a cold, factual hiss. "You will have nothing. No name, no money, no protection. You will be an exile, a ghost, and so will she. Do you understand me, boy? You think you can protect her now? Try protecting her when you are a nobody. When you have no men, no guns, and no power. Try protecting her when Isabella decides to finish what she started." It was a perfect trap. He wasn't just threatening me. He was threatening her. He was threatening to strip me of the one thing that kept her safe. My power. If I was disowned, Elena was an open, unprotected target, and I would be a dead man walking, unable to stop any of it. I was caged. My father held the power of the familia, the only thing that could provide the umbrella of protection she needed, and he was holding it hostage. I looked at Marco. He was just broken. "He's right, Nico," Marco whispered, his voice ravaged. "Not about the marriage, but about her. This has to end. You have to let her go." His eyes pleaded with me, brother to brother. If you drag her back into this, I'm not your soldato anymore. I'm her brother, and I will stand between you and her. I'll take her, we'll disappear, and I will treat you as the enemy you are." A pincer. My father on one side, my best friend on the other. One held my power, the other held her life. Both were demanding the same price. I looked at the floor, the intricate Persian rug blurring beneath my feet. I was the viper, the most feared man in the city, and I had been brought to my knees in a bloodless coup. There was only one move, one way to save her. I had to make her not mine. I had to cut her out so cleanly and so brutally that no one, not my father, not Isabella, not our rivals, would ever see her as my weakness again. I had to become the monster they all thought I was. I lifted my head. My face was a mask of cold, hard stone. I had buried Nico and resurrected the capo. "Fine," I said. The word was a shard of ice. My father sat back, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across his face. "Good. You will. I will handle it." I turned to Marco. My voice was devoid of all emotion. "Give me her phone." Marco flinched, but he reached into his jacket and handed it to me. Her phone. Pink, with a small, stupid case. It felt like a bomb in my hand. I turned and walked out of the study, not looking back. I didn't run, I walked. Every step was a fresh hell. I was a dead man walking, and I was on my way to kill the only thing that had ever made me feel alive. The back door of the bakery was dark. I used my key, the click of the lock echoing in. the quiet alley with the finality of a gunshot. She was there in an instant, running from the apartment stairs. Her face was pale, blotchy from crying, her eyes wide with a desperate, terrified hope. "Nico," she breathed, relief flooding her features. "Thank God. Marco, he was here. He took my phone. I didn't know how to reach you." I cut her off. I didn't speak. I just held up her phone. Her words died. The relief on her face curdled, replaced by a slow, dawning confusion. "What? What's wrong? Why do you have that? Nico, you're scaring me." I stepped past her, into the warmth of her kitchen, and tossed the phone onto her counter. It skidded across the steel, stopping just short of a bowl of flour. "It's over, Elena." Her breath hitched. "What? No, no. Is this because of Marco? We can fix this. I can talk to him. He's just scared. This isn't about Marco." My voice was the one from her nightmares, the one from that first morning, cold, cruel, empty. "Then, what are you talking about?" she whispered, her hands twisting in her apron. "Isabella? Did she came here, Nico, she threatened." "This isn't about her either," I lied. "This is about me. Marco was right. You were right." "Right about what?" I turned to look at her, my face a mask of pure, bored indifference. "You're a baker, Elena. You're a distraction. A game. A civilian. And I'm done playing." I watched the color drain from her face. I watched the light in her eyes, the one I had come to crave like a drug, flicker and die. It was the most brutal thing I had ever done. "You're lying," she whispered, her voice a hollow shell. "Last night, you're lying." "Am I?" I had to make it final. I had to make it hurt. I had to give her a reason to hate me so much she'd never, ever look for me again. "Isabella is back," I said, my voice flat. "My father is right. It's time to do my duty. It's time to stop playing house." I let a cruel smirk touch my lips. "I'm marrying her. The engagement is back on." That was the killing blow. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just broke. I watched it happen. Her shoulders slumped. Her hands fell to her sides. She looked for a second like a marionette with its strings cut. The vibrant, defiant, strong woman who had stood up to me was gone. I had murdered her. "Get out," she whispered. I didn't move. I couldn't. I was memorizing her, this final broken image of her. This was the price. I said, her voice cracked, and a single tear, a tear of pure, agonizing rage, finally escaped. "Get out!" She turned, her back to me, her shoulders shaking in a silent, violent sob. I turned. I walked. Every step away from her was a nail in my own coffin. I was walking away from my oxygen. I was walking away from the sugar, the vanilla, the life. I was walking back into the cold, dark, suffocating tomb of my world. I made it to my car. I got in. I sat in the dark, my hands gripping the steering, wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I was safe. My family was strong. The alliance was secure. Elena was finally protected. I had won. I threw my head back against the headrest, a single, silent, agonizing roar trapped in my chest. I had done my duty. I was the Capo, and I was completely, utterly dead inside. Chapter 8. Nico. I stood in the dark, my back to the glittering, indifferent city lights, a glass of whiskey in my hand. The ice had long since melted. I was wearing a black $4,000 suit, a white shirt, and a silk tie, knotted so tight it was a civilized noose. My father had called. The engagement party, a grotesque celebration of my surrender, was in an hour. I was dressed for my own funeral. It had been 4 days. 4 days, 21 hours and 14 minutes since I had walked out of her bakery, since I had murdered the light in her eyes, since I had become the monster I always swore I wouldn't be. The victory was hollow. It was a gaping, septic wound. I had done my duty. My father was satisfied. The Vescovi alliance was secure. Isabella was, presumably, triumphant, and Elena was safe. This was the one single fact I clung to, the one truth that kept me from putting my 1911 in my mouth and ending the suffocating emptiness. She was safe. She hated me. She would grieve, and then, God willing, she would forget me. She would go back to her simple, clean life of sugar and flour. She was protected. It was the right choice. It was the only choice. So why did it feel like I had lit my own soul on fire? I was a ghost. I hadn't slept. I hadn't eaten. I was just a suit, a capo, a title. The man, Nico, had died on her bakery floor. He'd bled out, and she had tried to save him, but I had killed him anyway. I had sacrificed him for her. I'd been haunted. Not by the men I'd killed, not by the ambush, by the smell of vanilla. I'd scrubbed this entire safe house, but I could still smell it. I'd thrown out the box of tea she'd left. I'd erased her from my phone, from my life, but I couldn't erase her from the air. She was in my lungs. I took a drink. The whiskey was ash. A sharp, triple knock on the penthouse door. I didn't move. I didn't care who it was. My father, Isabella, a rival with a bullet. It didn't matter. The key code chirped, and the door opened. Only one person had that code. Leo, my most trusted soldato, a man of few words and absolute unswerving loyalty. Not to my father, to me. He was a mountain in a dark suit, his face a block of carved granite. "Boss," he rumbled. "I'm busy," I said, not turning. "The party, I know. You need to see this." "I don't need to do anything, Leo. Get out. It's about the ambush." That got my attention. I turned, slow, my dead eyes focused on him. Leo hadn't been part of the sit-down. He hadn't been in my father's study. He wasn't part of the political game. He was my bloodhound. And for the last week, while I'd been descending into my own personal hell, he'd been on the hunt. He was holding a thick, brown manila file. "I've been digging off the books like you asked," Leo said, his voice a low, flat rumble. "You were right. There was a mole." "It was Isabella," I said, the words dead, tired. "I know. It's handled. The alliance is—" "No," Leo cut in, a rare act of interruption. He stepped forward, his eyes grim. "It's not handled. You know she was a political player. You know she was leaking to your father. What you don't know is that she planned it." The glass in my hand stopped halfway to my mouth. "Planned what?" "The ambush, boss." Leo stepped forward and laid the file on the glass coffee table. He opened it. "She set you up." The room was silent save for the clink of my glass as I set it down. My hands, I noticed, were perfectly steady. "Explain," I said. Leo pointed. "The crew you retired in the South Ward? Their leader was a freelancer named Petrov. I dug into his financials. 3 days before the ambush, he got a wire transfer. $100,000 from an offshore account. He laid down a bank statement. An account I traced back to a shell corporation," Leo continued, "which is owned by Isabella's personal assistant, a.k.a. her." I stared at the paper. 100,000. Enough to wound, not enough to kill, enough to make me look sloppy. That's not all. Leo laid down a printed call log. "Burner phone pings. A call from Isabella's shell company phone to Petrov. 1 hour before the hit. The call pinged a tower 2 blocks from your route. She was coordinating. My heart, which I had presumed dead, gave a single, hard, painful thump. "And this," Leo said, his voice dropping. He laid a photograph on top of the pile. It was grainy, a black and white security still from a parking garage. But it was unmistakable. A woman in a blonde wig and sunglasses, her profile sharp, her red-soled heels a dead giveaway. She was handing an envelope to a man. Petrov, 2 days before the attack. Isabella. It wasn't a political leak. It wasn't a misunderstanding or an attempt to manage the situation, as she'd claimed. She had tried to have me killed. No, not killed. Wounded. The realization came crashing in, a tidal wave of ice and fire. It all made sense. The entire grotesque, beautiful, horrible plan. She set up the ambush. She paid to have me wounded, to have my men killed, to make me look weak, to make me look distracted, to break my alliances, to send my father into a panic about the old guard. She hadn't just manipulated my father. She had created the entire crisis that forced his hand. She had built the entire cage. I couldn't speak. I was choking on it. All this time, I had been fighting my father. I had been protecting Elena from him, from the familia. But the snake wasn't my father. It was her. I looked at the photo, at her smiling, treacherous face, and I thought of Elena. I thought of her face when I'd told her she was a game. I thought of the light I had personally, brutally extinguished. I thought of her, alone in her bakery, weeping, while I prepared to marry the woman who had caused it all. I had sacrificed the only good, clean, true thing in my life to protect the very monster who had put the knife in my back. I had chosen the snake over the dove. I had done it based on a lie I'd been force-fed by my father, who had himself been duped. I had not been protecting Elena. I had been gifting her and my entire family to our single greatest enemy. My grief, the hollow, empty fog I'd been living in, didn't just burn away. It calcified. It turned from a cold, dead thing into something hot, sharp, and lethally heavy. My misery turned to rage, a pure, white-hot, righteous rage that was so cold it burned. The hollow man was gone. The defeated son was gone. The viper was back. I looked at Leo. My eyes were clear. My hands were steady. My purpose was absolute. "Boss?" Leo asked, seeing the change in me. "She didn't just try to kill me," I whispered, my voice a new, terrible sound. "She tried to bury me. She made me bury myself." I straightened my tie. I looked at the suit, the armor of my surrender. No more. "The party is off," I said. My voice was no longer dead. It was alive. It was the sound of a blade being unsheathed. "Leo, get my father. Get Don Vescovi. Get his entire family." I picked up the manila file. "And get Marco. Tell them all to be at the compound. My boardroom, midnight." Leo's eyes widened, just slightly. He understood. "Boss, your father already? He won't come to a sit-down you call. Not now." I looked at him, and for the first time in 4 days, I smiled. It was a terrifying sight. "He will," I said, "because it's not a sit-down." I picked up my phone. It's a trial, and I'm the judge. Chapter 9. Nico Midnight. The main boardroom at the compound was silent. It was my room, not my father's. All modern glass, black leather, and cold, brushed steel, with a single massive black oak table at its center. It was a room designed for executions, political or otherwise. I was at the head of the table, where I belonged. I wasn't wearing the suit of my surrender. I'd changed into what I wore for war: black pants, black boots, and a black, high-collared Henley that didn't hide the lines of the custom leather shoulder holster underneath. In front of me, in the center of the polished black expanse, was a single, thick manila file. The door opened. First came the Vescovis. Don Vescovi, a man whose arrogance was only matched by his gaudy jewelry, flanked by his two idiot sons. And on his arm, Isabella. She was a vision in emerald green, a dress that screamed wealth and victory. She looked for all the world like a queen arriving for her coronation. Her smile was smug, triumphant, and as she saw me at the head of the table, it faltered, just for a second. She thought this was a final, pathetic act of defiance before my surrender. "Niccolo, this is irregular," Don Vescovi blustered, gesturing to the chairs. "Your father should be—" "Sit," I said. My voice was not loud. It was not angry. It was flat, cold, and dead. It was the sound of a vault door closing, and it stopped him cold. They sat. The door opened again. My father, Valerio, stormed in, his face a mask of thunderous rage. "Niccolo, what is the meaning of this? You will move from that seat. You will apologize to our guests. This trial, as you called it, is a disgrace. Sit, Padre." He stared at me, his mouth open, apoplectic. He had never heard that tone from me. He was, for the first time in his life, genuinely shocked. He sat, his face purple. The door opened a final time. Marco. He looked like a ghost. He was pale, his eyes hollowed out, defeated. He looked at me, at my father, at Isabella, and then at the floor. He took a seat in the corner, as far from all of us as he could get. He looked like a man here to watch a friend be executed. I looked at the closed door. Leo stood guard outside. It was just us, the Vipers, and the man who had lost his sister. I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The silence in the room was so heavy, so absolute, it was suffocating. "We're here," I began, my voice resonating in the quiet, "to celebrate an engagement, an alliance." My father nodded, satisfied. Isabella smiled, a slow, sensual stretching of her red lips. "But first," I said, "we must address a matter of business, the South Ward ambush." Isabella's smile tightened, just a fraction. My father scoffed. "Old news, son. Your sloppiness—" "Wasn't sloppiness." I looked at Isabella. It was a setup. The room went utterly still. "You're obsessed." Isabella laughed, a high, tinkling sound that was just a little too sharp. "Nicky, darling, you can't blame me for your failures. Valerio, please, he's just lashing out." "Am I?" I picked up the file. I let it drop onto the table. The thud was as loud as a gunshot. "Let's talk about a man named Petrov," I said, my voice conversational. I walked around the table, a predator circling its prey. Freelancer, ex-Spetsnaz, ran a small, violent crew. The crew, in fact, that attacked my car. I pulled out the first paper, a bank statement. 3 days before the ambush, Petrov received a wire transfer, $100,000. I slid the paper in front of Don Vescovi. From an offshore account in the Caymans, an account registered to a shell corporation. Vescovi Imports. Don Vescovi's face went white. His sons looked confused. "My imports?" he stammered. That is preposterous." "It gets better," I said. I pulled out the call logs. "This is a burner phone ping. A call from this Shell Corporation's registered agent to Petrov, 1 hour before the hit. The call, you'll note, pinged a tower 2 blocks from my route." coordinating. Isabella wasn't smiling anymore. She was staring at the papers, her knuckles white where she gripped the table. And finally, I pulled out the last item, the photograph. I didn't slide it. I placed it gently in front of her. The grainy parking garage still. The blonde wig. The red-soled heels. You. She stared at the picture. The blood drained from her face. "Valerio, he's lying!" she shrieked, her voice cracking, the polished queen vanishing, replaced by a cornered rat. "He's lost his mind. He's forging documents. He's trying to sabotage our families." "Silence!" my father bellowed, rising to his feet. "Niccolo, this is madness. You will apologize." "She didn't just leak intel, Mahapadre," I said, my voice dropping, lethal. I turned my gaze to him. "She hired the guns. She paid to have me wounded. She created the crisis that you, in your infinite wisdom, were so desperate to solve. She made me look weak, so you would force my hand." My father stopped. He looked at the photo. He looked at the bank statement. He looked at Isabella. And he finally saw the snake in his house. He looked old. He looked ashamed. He collapsed back into his chair, his face gray. Isabella saw it too. She had lost her champion. Her eyes darted to her father, her brothers. They were already shaking their heads, their faces masks of terror. They were cutting her loose. "Nico, Nicky, darling," she whimpered, standing up, her voice a desperate, broken plea. It wasn't supposed to be like this. It was just to get your attention, to make you see, to win you back." I looked at her, my face devoid of all emotion. "You didn't just try to kill me. You tried to bury me. You used my family. You used my father. And you used the woman I loved to do it." I walked back to the head of the table. I sat down. The judge was back in his seat. "This alliance," I said to Don Vescovi, "is over. Your shell corporation is being seized as a fine for your daughter's treachery. You will consider yourself lucky that I am letting you walk out of this room." "And her?" he whispered, not even looking at his daughter. I turned my gaze to Isabella. She was weeping, her mascara running, her beautiful mask completely shattered. "You," I said, my voice quiet, "are banished. From this city, from this life. If you are in the 5 boroughs by sunrise, you will be buried in them." She let out a choked sob. Her brothers, seeing their opening, grabbed her, hauling her bodily from the chair. "Nicky, no! You can't! I love you!" she screamed as they dragged her, fighting, from the room. The door shut. Silence. Don Vescovi and his remaining son didn't move. "Get out," I said. They fled. Now, it was just us. My father sat in his chair, a shrunken old man. He stared at his hands. "Valerio," I said. He flinched. "You chose an alliance over your blood. You let a snake into my house, into our house, because you were too blind, too arrogant, and too obsessed with the past to see the present." He looked up, his eyes wet. "Son, Niccolo, I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," I said. "It wasn't anger. It was just a fact. You saw what you wanted to see. You saw a distraction, not a traitor." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the dark compound. My compound. "You're retired, Padre." He let out a sharp, choked breath. You can't." "I just did." I turned back to him. "You will retain your home, your respect, your title, in public. But in this family, I am the Don. You will not attend another meeting. You will not make another call. You will not question my orders. You are done. We are done." He stared, defeated. He knew. He had no power. His alliances were with men like Vescovi, dinosaurs. I had just proven them to be fools. He slowly, painfully got to his feet. He was an old man in an expensive suit. He walked to the door, opened it, and left, without another word. The boardroom was silent again, except for one man, Marco. He hadn't moved. He was just watching me, his face a mixture of awe, terror, and a dawning, terrible guilt. I walked over to his chair. He flinched, as if expecting me to hit him. I didn't. I just stood in front of him. "You were right to protect her, Mark Fratello," I said, my voice rough, the capo gone, the dawn fading. This was just Nico. He looked up, his eyes swimming. "You were just wrong about who the enemy was," I continued. "And so was I. I broke her, Marco. To save her. I broke her." "Nico," he whispered, his voice thick. "What I said, in the study." "You were a brother," I said, cutting him off. "I get it. It's the one goddamn decent thing in this whole mess. You were a brother." I clapped a hand on his shoulder. "But now, I need mine." I pulled him to his feet. I gave him a hard, short embrace, clasping his back. "You're my consigliere now, Marco. Officially, I need you. I've cleaned house, but I can't run this family alone." He pulled back, his eyes clearing, a new, stronger light in them. The broken soldato was gone. He was my right hand. Yes, boss. Nico. "Yes." "Good," I said. I nodded, my mind already clear. My family was safe. My power was absolute. The threats were gone. I had fixed everything, except the one thing that mattered. I walked to the door, grabbing my keys from a side table. "Where are you going?" Marco asked. "It's 3 a.m. I stopped, my hand on the doorknob. I looked back at him, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the cold, dead weight in my chest lifted, replaced by a desperate, terrifying hope. "I have to go fix my world," I said. "And she's not at the compound."
Chapter 10. Elena. It was over. My world, which had once been so full of the warm, sweet scents of vanilla, sugar, and rising bread, was now a sterile, hollow box. I'd spent the last 2 days packing. My small apartment was empty, the furniture draped in white, ghostly sheets. Downstairs, the bakery was dark, the ovens cold, the display cases scrubbed and empty. I had sold it. The paperwork was signed. The new owners, a corporate chain, would take possession tomorrow. They'd paint over the mural my nonna had helped me with. They'd change the name. They'd gut my sanctuary and fill it with cheap coffee and frozen pastries. But it didn't matter. It was just a building. The life, the magic, the love. That was what had been ripped out. Nico had done his job. He had been so cruel, so cold, so final that he had destroyed everything. He'd not only broken my heart, he'd broken my spirit. I couldn't stay. I couldn't be in a city that held him. I couldn't be in this shop, which had once been my safe place, and was now just a stage for my greatest humiliation. My brother Marco had been by. He'd seen what Nico had done to me. The rage in his eyes had been terrifying, but it was hollowed out by his own guilt. He'd tried to apologize. He'd tried to explain. I hadn't let him. I'd just told him I was leaving. He looked like I had shot him. It was just one more piece of collateral damage. It was 3 a.m. My flight left at 7. I had one last box to tape, filled with my nonna's old recipes. I sealed it, the shriek of the tape gun echoing with a terrible finality in the empty room. That was it. My last act was to tape the permanently closed sign to the front glass door. I smoothed the paper against the glass, my reflection a pale, hollow-eyed ghost looking back at me. A single, hot, angry tear finally escaped, tracing a path through the flour dust on my cheek. I'd cried until I was empty, and now there was just this, a dull, throbbing ache. I turned, giving the empty, dark shop one last look. "Goodbye," I whispered. And then, the night exploded. A wave of light so bright it was blinding swept through the shop, pouring in from the street. Headlights. Not one set, but 3, 4, a motorcade. A fleet of black, gleaming, terrifyingly expensive cars. They slid to the curb, parking in a perfect military-style formation. My heart didn't just stop. It seized. Isabella. My blood turned to ice water. My mind flashed to her cold, silky threats. You'll be crushed, and he won't even sweep up the crumbs. She'd won. She had Nico, and now she was here to finish the job. To what? To gloat? To hurt me? I did the only thing I could. I scrambled, my legs weak, for the rolling pin I'd left on the counter. My one pathetic wooden weapon against her entire world. A car door opened. The one in the center. It wasn't her. It was him. Nico. He got out. He wasn't the cold, cruel Capo who had broken me. He wasn't the wounded soldier who had bled on my floor. This was someone else. He wore black, a dark Henley that fit him like armor. He looked, from his polished boots to the set of his jaw, like a king. He looked like the dawn. His men fanned out, silent and dark, securing the street. He waved them off. He told them to wait. And he walked, alone, to my door. I was frozen, clutching the rolling pin, my knuckles white. He stopped, his hand on the glass, and he saw it. He saw the closed sign. His face, which had been a mask of calm, controlled power, just crumpled. It was a flicker, a fractional, agonizing slip. He looked for 1 second like he had just been shot. He pushed the door. It was unlocked. He stepped inside, the bell above the door jingling a weak, pathetic welcome. He just stood there, his presence sucking all the air from the room. He was too big, too dark, too everything for my empty, broken shop. Get out, I whispered. My voice was a dry rattle. I raised the rolling pin, my hands shaking so violently it was useless. Get out! Elena, he said, his voice. It wasn't cold, it wasn't angry, it was ravaged. It was the sound of gravel and glass. Please, 5 minutes, just listen. I'm done listening to you, I shouted, my voice finally breaking, all the pain, all the rage, all the humiliation of the last 4 days erupting. You got what you wanted, you won! You have your fiancé, your duty. Go and leave me alone. She's gone. That stopped me. What? Isabella. She's gone. He took 1 step closer. I raised the pin. He stopped. It was all a lie, Elena. All of it. He didn't wait for me to ask. He just talked. The words poured out of him, raw, fast, and desperate. He told me everything. The ambush, the bank transfers, the photo, the sit-down. She set up the ambush, Lena. She paid to have me wounded. She built the entire trap. She made me look weak, to make my father force my hand. She created the entire crisis. I just stared, my mind unable to process the sheer scale of the treachery. He was struggling. This powerful, terrifying man was struggling for words. I thought I was choosing between my family and you. I thought I was protecting you. From him. From this. I thought, by breaking you, I was saving your life. So you just, I choked, the words a bitter acid. You just threw me away. You called me a game. You gutted me, Nico, all based on a lie? Yes. The word was a confession. He didn't make excuses. He didn't try to soften it. He just took it. He met my eyes, and I saw, for the first time, the full, unshielded truth. He was devastated. He was a man who had walked through hell, and he knew, with agonizing certainty, that he had been the one who had lit the match. It's unforgivable, he whispered. I know that. I'm not here. I'm not here to ask you to forgive me. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn that. If you even let me. He took a step closer, and this time I didn't raise the pin. I'm here, he said, his voice raw, to ask you not to leave. His gaze went from my face to the closed sign taped to the door. He strode past me, his hand, so big and scarred, closed around the paper, and he ripped it from the glass, crumpling it in his fist. Don't do this, he breathed, turning back to me, his eyes burning. Don't let her win. Don't let me win. I was so confused. What? What are you asking, Nico? I can't be your Regina. I can't be in your world. I can't be that person. It will kill me. I know. He closed the distance between us, stopping just a foot away. And I will never, ever ask you to be. He looked around the empty, dark shop, at the packed boxes, at the cold ovens. This is Your world, Elena, not mine. He took my hand, the one not holding the rolling pin. He gently uncurled my fingers and the pin thudded, forgotten, to the floor. He held my hand in both of his. I'm not asking you to be my queen. I'm not asking you to set one foot in my compound. I am not asking you to join my world. He looked down at our joined hands, his voice dropping to a low, desperate vow. I'm asking you to let me join yours. My breath hitched. A tear I hadn't known was waiting fell. Let me sit in your corner, he whispered, his thumb stroking my knuckles. Let me drink your coffee. Let me be the guy who keeps the books and scares away the creeps. You can have this bakery. You can have this life. I will build a goddamn wall of fire around it. I will keep you so safe, so clean, you'll forget my world even exists. You just have to have me in it. He looked up, his eyes pleading. Please, Elena, don't leave. Don't close. I stared at him, this magnificent, terrifying, broken man who was offering me everything. Not his power, not his empire, just himself. On my terms. I didn't speak, I let go of his hand, raised my own, and with trembling fingers, I touched his face. I traced the line of his jaw, his cheek, his brow. He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch like a starving man. You're an idiot, Nico Bianchi, I whispered, my voice thick with tears. A shaky, broken laugh escaped him. I know. You promise? I whispered. My world, my terms. I vow, he said, his voice absolute. On my life, on my soul, your world, your terms. Always. I let out the breath I'd been holding for 4 days, and I fell forward, my arms wrapping around his neck, my face burying in his chest. He caught me, his arms locking around my waist, holding me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. He held me like he was holding the entire world. And for the first time in my own bakery with a Don of the Mafia, I was finally perfectly safe. 1 year later. The bell on the door jingled, a bright, happy sound. Welcome in, I called out, not looking up from the intricate lattice I was weaving on an apple pie. Hey, Sorlina, Marco's voice boomed. You're burning the cornetti. I am not burning the cornetti, I laughed, pointing at my new, massive, state-of-the-art timer. I have a system, unlike you who still thinks a little brown is a technical term. It is a technical term, he grumbled, leaning over the counter to steal a piece of raw dough. I smacked his hand. He was here, in my bakery, almost every single day. He was my brother again. He was my consigliere, technically, but here, he was just my head of pastry tasting and quality control. My shop, Elena's Corner Cafe, was no longer a small, quiet shop. It was thriving. Nico had, as he'd promised, invested. He'd bought the entire building. We'd expanded into the next storefront, and I now had a staff of 4, a roaring wholesale business, and the most popular brunch spot in the neighborhood. It was bright, full of light, and always smelled of sugar and vanilla. I handed Marco a coffee. Here, go sit. You're distracting me. He grinned, gave me a kiss on the temple, and went to his usual table. I finished the pie and looked up, my gaze sweeping across my crowded, happy, safe world. And my eyes landed, as they always did, on the corner booth. His booth. He was there. He was always there. He was in a perfectly tailored dark suit, reading a report on his tablet, a small, untouched espresso by his hand. To anyone else, he was just another businessman, an intimidating, impossibly handsome businessman, but a customer nonetheless. His men were outside, always, a black car, parked discreetly down the street. They were his shadow, and he was my shield. He hadn't broken his vow, not once. He was the Don of the city, a man of power and violence and darkness, but he never, ever brought it into my world. He'd built his wall of fire, and inside it, I was free. He must have felt me looking. He looked up, his dark eyes finding mine across the crowded room. The hard lines of the Capo melted, the heavy weight of the Don lifted. He was just Nico. He smiled. A real, slow, genuine smile that was meant only for me. A smile that reached his eyes and made my heart do a stupid, familiar flip. I smiled back, my heart so full I thought it might burst. He kept his vow. He was the most feared man in the city. But in my world, he was just my husband. And he was home.